Good afternoon. Welcome to this March 5th Early Childhood Subcommittee meeting. We have two bills on our agenda for today, HB 903 and HB 785. For 903, we are voting on that bill today. HB 785 is just going to be for discussion only. And members, you should have amendments for both of these bills that were distributed shortly here before our Zoom call started. So why don't we start with HB 903? This is the chair's bill, access to attorneys, advocates, and consultants for special education program and fund established. Alistair, do you want to walk us through the amendments?
Yes, absolutely, Madam Chair. So the amendments clarify who an advocate is. It offers a definition of advocate, which is someone who is not an attorney or a consultant under the definitions in the bill, who is nonetheless providing support and guidance during an individualized education program meeting, mediation process, or due process hearing to a student with a disability or the student's parents or guardian. The amendments also require that everyone who participates in the program undergo a training developed by the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service Group on special education law, both at the state and federal level, and how they apply. And finally, the amendments limit slightly the data that's reported about each IEP student based on when there's a mediation proceeding or a due process proceeding, rather than just whoever is in the program.
And I'll just, before we open it up for questions, note that these were amendments that had come up in the hearing. Mabe was asking for some additional clarity around this part of the bill, and they have seen the amendments and are good with them. So questions about the amendments? Okay, if there's no, yes, Delegate Ebersol.
I move the amendments, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the amendments have been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye, or please raise your hand. Great. That was everybody's hands, so I won't call for any opposition. So the amendments passed unanimously. Questions or discussion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
Okay, bill's been moved and seconded. Last chance for discussion here. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Okay, bill comes out unanimously with a favorable recommendation on HB 903. So moving on to HB 785, this is the bill from Delegate Jones that we heard a couple of weeks ago, the Freedom to Read Act. And we do have some amendments from the committee that we have distributed a little while ago. And Alistair, if you want to walk through those, please.
Absolutely. So the first thing is the bill is made an emergency measure, which would make it go into effect 60 days after its signature by the governor, assuming that 3/5 of the General Assembly were to vote for it. Additionally, the amendments create a procedure for school library systems for the removal of books. Under the amendments, each local school system would have to develop and implement a policy in which books could be challenged. They would remain on the shelf while challenged, and in a reasonable and timely manner, there would be a review of the appropriateness of the material. Additionally, the amendments add a few things to the state standards for libraries for both the school systems and other libraries in the state. These things include that libraries' public spaces must be made available to those it serves in the school context, that's students and school personnel, that the libraries must honor the individual rights of privacy of each person who uses them, and that the right to use a library is open to everyone and cannot be limited based on an individual's origin or background or age or point of view. And the other thing that these amendments do, in addition to clarifying how exactly the process by which the comptroller will withhold funding for libraries that receive state funding that do not follow these state standards for libraries, is to remove a altered crime for theft or destruction of a library book, which was what constituted that crime was altered in this bill, and that's been removed by these amendments.
All right, we'll open up for questions. Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm reading the bill, but working my way through it carefully. I'm curious if there's any address in the amendments or the bill itself that addresses the idea of removing a book preemptorily before it has been reviewed, if it's up for review, or does it remain on the shelf until the review is complete?
Yes, it remains on the shelf under the amendments until the review is complete
Thank
in
you.
in the school context.
Thank you very much.
Delegate Grossman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for my clarification, in the school context, who is reviewing the challenge? Who's responsible for that review and recommendation at the end of a challenge?
It's going to be up to each local school system who they assign to do that. Presumably it would be school personnel either at the county level or in the school system, but it'll be all that's required is that each county board of education has to adopt a policy on the review, and it has to be timely.
Right, so each district would have their own discretion in terms of who exactly that would be.
Yeah, I guess that raises just a little concern for me because I think there are certain districts that group could potentially be stacked in, I guess is my concern. So that's all.
Noted. Delegate Long.
Yeah, concerns I have is the books will remain on the shelves while it's being reviewed. I just feel that, being safe for kids, make sure our children are protected, I would think it'd be just the opposite. Given what if a book is put on a shelf that is full of hate speech, explicit pornography. And I'm just being honest. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but as a kid coming up, books like Playboy and all that were hidden, and we weren't allowed to get to those. Hustler, and they were covered up and said you had to be 18 years old to even enter in that area. And I'm just concerned, are things going to fall through the cracks that really are bad for the kids to be looking at? And that's my main concern. Again, I don't want to. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Long. And I'll just note that the provisions that we're talking about here are specific to school libraries. And as we heard at the hearing, since there were some school librarians and media specialists who testified, they are doing reviews before materials get put on the shelf and are setting those things. So this is really about in a school library, if there is a concern raised by a student or a parent after that point, what happens. So just process-wise, wanted to clarify there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to just first the response to the delegate's question about what sort of libraries are included in this bill, school libraries and any state or any library that receives state funds.
That's right. The provisions are a little bit different in terms of school libraries versus the state funded or say public county libraries. In terms of what exactly the bill is requiring of them. In both cases, we are expecting that they operate in manners that are consistent with kind of the goals set out in the bill, but only the public libraries could have funding withheld if they are not in compliance.
Thank you for clarity on the differences. When it comes to the school libraries, there's a provision in there that says the library should honor the right of privacy of each student. And then it goes on to say must protect the personal data and information. Is the bill envisioning that they would do something other than protecting the personal data and information? I'm trying to flesh out what it means to honor the right of privacy.
Sure. Good question. So that is language that is inspired by the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights. And so we included a comparable provision for public libraries as well. I'll be honest, I'm not sure on the school side, versus say a county library, how much data they're actually collecting about their users besides like what books they currently have checked out. I know on the public library side, in most cases, libraries are not keeping a lot of information about their users kind of purposefully, because this has been a long stated goal of the American Library Association. Does that fully answer your question? Sorry if I didn't quite hit that.
It touches on it. I know, just anecdotally being a mom, when my son had a book that he didn't return to the library, they withheld his report card from being able to come home. And so they would notify me, Khalil hasn't returned this book. We look forward and send it back in. And I'm trying to make sure that we aren't doing more than is necessary to protect the right, because honor the right of privacy just seems very broad. When you're talking about privacy, but protecting personal data and information, that seems certainly attainable to do. So I was wondering if it wouldn't be better to just not have honor the right of privacy, since it's so broad, and stick to what our goal is, which is to protect personal data and information.
Well, I'll say today we're not voting on the bill. We're just having the initial conversation. So yeah, happy to continue the conversation, I think, on this provision offline. We'll take another look.
Thank you. And then looking at the part that relates to all the libraries, I brought this up in the bill hearing as well. The provision on, I guess this is page, how did it say the page number? I'm not sure. I apologize. But it's section 23-102.1. And then it's section B, subsection B of that. And then subsection 1 of B says library materials, services, and resources exist and should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all persons the library serves. So we've made it clear that we want our libraries to not discriminate against any person, so it should be open. But the mandate, and I think we've strengthened it even more with the amendments. It said goal, the amendment says policy. So I think it strengthens it more. My concern is that when we require them to have information and interest for all persons, there are some persons who have prurient interests, who have interests that run afoul of our laws, norms, standards. If we're talking about someone interested, I think I used the example of pedophilia in the bill hearing. When we say you have to provide something for the interest of all persons, reading it, it would include that person and their interest as well. Is there a way that we can more narrowly tailor that so that we aren't obligating our libraries to all interests?
And that certainly isn't the intent of the bill, and I'm pretty sure the bill sponsor said as much in her hearing. Again, this is language that comes from the American Library Association's Library Bill of Rights, or is inspired by that, and has been in place for a long time. If we look back historically over many decades, and I think that Bill of Rights actually dates back more than 100 years. There have been a lot of challenges to books over time, to what is considered acceptable or not. Again, we're putting faith in our librarians, I think, to choose what is appropriate within the confines of this. But if you have particular language that you're looking at, again, today's just a conversation. We have some time here.
Sure, I'll put something together and shoot out an email. I think the bill could get to a place where I could support it, but I think that some of the language is just broad in ways that we're opening the door for things that, to your point, I don't think that's the sponsor's intent or the intent of the bill. But if the language isn't clear, then it could be exploited by people who are bad actors. So I think we could make it stronger with some clarity. And I wanted to understand the rationale behind striking doctrinal in that same section and adding ideological or religious disapproval. What's the difference and what is the goal there?
There's no difference. The intent is to be the same. It's just like the prose in which the code is written is an attempt to be the most regular, understood by all language, and so this is just changing it to something that is, more commonly used synonyms. Okay,
so ideological and religious are interchangeable with doctrinal. Is that what I hear you saying? Okay, I'll take a deeper look at that as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Ebersol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the possibility of having Playboy magazines on the shelf in schools and other material I'm going to check, but I'm pretty sure I'm asking the question, don't schools already have a standard vetting process for books that go on their shelves? It's not as if it's the Wild West. Any book can be placed there right now. They have their own vetting process in this particular case. And so what we're talking about here is the review process is for further consideration of something that has perhaps passed that review process marginally, and now some people are concerned about the content. We're not talking about putting pornographic magazines on the shelves in schools. Isn't that so? But you can confirm that if you like.
Yes, Delegate Eversole, that's my understanding, and that's certainly what we heard at the bill hearing. Is there already is a lot of vetting that goes into the decisions of what is placed on school library shelves by school personnel, by the media specialist, by the librarian. Yes, they are making very selective choices, and to my knowledge, there is no pornographic magazines that are in school libraries today.
Thank you.
Delegate Long.
Thank you for the second bite. Pornographic, as far as written, or I think it's very broad how that we're interpreting this. What I might consider pornography, what you might consider pornography, might be two different things. That being said, I'd like to see us address that if possible. The second thing is, I think what gives me the biggest heartburn is a lot of these books are going to be open to everyone. And, my fear is the age appropriate reading for some of our children. How are we going to determine that? I mean, I don't want my grandson, 5 years old, reading about stuff that is left up to me to teach him as far as human sexuality, or my husband, my wife or my daughter or his father. But from what I've heard, that these books will be accessible to anyone. Are they going to be any way they're going to put some kind of guardrails up to keep age appropriate material to the kids that, I just don't want to see the wrong books getting into young people's hands. That's what my concern is.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. I'll just say that most of our public schools are segregated by age already. So elementary versus middle versus high school. My son's an elementary school student. They don't stock high school level books in his school library. And at the bill hearing, we did even hear within a school, I believe it was for 8th graders. It was a middle school librarian, and she was saying they might have a book that's deemed appropriate for 8th graders. That's a judgment call by the librarian who has read the book and who's making an educated and informed decision on that. And then that book is labeled as, not for 6th or 7th graders. So they are even differentiating within a school and even within just a few years of kids' age of what's appropriate or what's not. That would still be up to the school to make those decisions under this bill.
What about the public libraries? How are they going to, protect kids getting hold of the wrong material?
Well, I mean, if we look now at how our libraries operate, they have a youth section, they have a children's section. They are, that is their guidance as to what is at a suitable age level for reading materials. Children and their families are going to just have to make informed decisions for themselves about what they can check out. But I mean, that's been the case for, I don't know, the whole history of libraries, I think, in this country.
I guess, and this will be the last thing I say, I guess the thing of it is, the way this bill is written, and from what I understand, that they won't be able to stop a child from reading a book. I'm just putting it in plain, simple, everyday language. So if a young child goes into a library and he wants to go into an area where it's age inappropriate, the way I believe this bill is written and the way I'm understanding it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that they could not stop this young person from going into an area that's age restricted or restricted. Am I correct?
That's my understanding of how libraries operate now. I'm not aware of any libraries in the state that would refuse to check out a book.
I would say that I don't think this bill addresses that, and I think that is still open for the policies of each library to mandate on their own. I think we learned from House Bill 208 that many libraries allow minors to check out other material on their library cards, but I don't think that there's anything in state law that mandates that or anything else, or in state statute, I should say.
Other discussion? And Delegate Long, did you still have another question, or is your hand just up from before? Yeah, no worries. Happens to all of us. Okay. Not seeing any other hands up. That will be it, I think, for today. Just so you know, subcommittee members, we will be meeting again on Thursday, likely immediately after floor. There are some other subcommittees that need to meet on Thursday, but I expect we're going to have a much longer list of bills for our subcommittee for Thursday. So I believe with that, we are adjourned.